Record on this. You got your little notification recording?
Yeah, it says recording.
Cool. Well, welcome to my shit show.
This is like high-tech stuff. This is no longer like Fisher Price's.
No, it's still
Pierre's
Fisher
first
Price.
podcast.
It's still Fisher Price equipment, but hopefully this all works out. So, welcome to the Figuring It All Out podcast. I'm your host solo today, Pierre Kamel, and today we have a very special guest, the functional gentleman, aka Mike Levandoski. Say that correctly?
Yeah.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. How you doing?
It's been a while since we've seen each other.
Yeah, I wanted to get to Camden, but it's been.
I think it was a couple alumni when you taught.
Probably, yeah.
And you had probably one of the best exits ever. You were like, "I'm driving back tonight," and I was like, "Why?" And you're like, "Because I got a hot Hispanic at home waiting for me."
That is the story of my life.
And then you dipped.
I could sleep here by myself, or I got this hot nigga Cuban girl waiting for me. Like, I'm out. Sorry, guys. Love you all. I'm gone.
So today's episode, we're going to cover what I thought was going to be a long conversation about what's going on in the world. And you're like, nah, I can fix that in 10 minutes. We're going to talk about this other stuff. And you're the first guest, and I'm going to bet for a while, that made an outline.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going on autopilot. You sound like you have a whole bunch of stuff pent up you want to talk about. This is going to be easy for me.
It's like the Seinfeld, the airing of grievances. I got a lot of things to say, and you people are going to listen.
All right, then.
So I guess I should do some background about me.
Who are you? Why should we listen to you?
Yeah, so no one should be listening to me. But
all
as far as...
Close the podcast now, everybody. Thank you for listening.
So I guess scientifically, because we want to talk about the coronavirus and things that are going on with that for a little bit.
Can we call it the Kung flu, or is it not appropriate? Like at work, do you call it the Kung flu?
No, definitely
Will it be
not.
frowned upon?
No, I mean, well...
Would they be like...
I might get an HR talk for that one.
Okay, so we'll keep it clean then.
Yeah, but it's like, so
what do you do?
So what I do is I am essentially I'm a research scientist at a large diagnostic company. I have a PhD in microbiology, molecular genetics. I've done a lot of work with cell biology, infectious disease. I've worked with malaria and like herpes viruses and a bunch of other different viruses, all sorts of stuff, done some HIV work, hepatitis and things of that nature. So I have a lot of experience with infectious disease overall. So, I mean, I've been a scientist my entire life. It's not like a career change for me. You know, I mean, I joke around with everybody and I say they change paths multiple times. They have different careers. And I was like, man, I just did science forever. And eventually they just gave me a PhD, said, get the hell out, and sent me on my way. You just do one thing for a long enough time. You just get a PhD in it, and they just tell you to go away.
You're like the one dude that actually took advantage of having to take a science class every semester.
Well, yeah.
And then a while, it was just science in the semester.
That was the problem, is that all my math and science scores were always like off the charts. Right. And then like English and verbal and whatever else is always low. So like I had no choice. I had to do science. That's all I could do. Right. I'm getting better at that now. But so anyways, I've done a lot of work with a lot of diagnostic stuff with viruses. So I have a good molecular background. I don't have a PhD in virology, but I've done a crap load of virology work, epidemiology work, and things of that nature. So I am what many would consider a subject matter expert. I certainly, the people that are spending, an hour a day Googling some things, most likely do not have the background knowledge that I would have on things that are going on. And so this kind of started out so that's kind of one of the reasons why Pierre wanted to reach out to me, because I do have a lot of background knowledge about this. And it's not going to be, one of the things that I'm going to say, it's not going to be very impressive, but I mean, it's, this is my field. But as far as outside of that, I think how Pierre and I got to know each other is that I've done a lot of, I've always liked fighting. I'm like a violent nerd, like John at SOE is like, you're like Rambo nerd. Like all you do is fight and do science. I was like, pretty much.
I still think I have that shirt.
It's a good one.
So Rambo nerd was good.
Yeah. So Pierre and I met because I do a lot of tactical firearms training. I've trained with, like Jaeger, Steve Fisher, Craig Douglas, Paul Sharp, John Farnham, John McPhee, Eric Utrecht, all these, lots of people. I have probably Probably thousands of hours of firearms training under professionals. I do a lot of combatives and like jiu-jitsu. I'm a Brazilian jiu-jitsu, one stripe blue belt, judo green belt. I was quote unquote overdue for promotions in both of those before, right before the pandemic. I actually had a surgery on my nose that took me out for like 3 or 4 months. And then we had the pandemic. So I'm overdue supposedly for promotions, whatever. I don't care. They're just belts. So I have experience in various combatives. I've done some stand-up work and stuff like that. So that's how Pierre and I know each other. We met at classes and stuff. We hit it off. My wife, your fiance, like each other, so that worked out well for us.
And another thing we have in common: both are abnormally good looking for us.
Yep.
It's not like we went up like a level or two. It's like we're still the doormen and they own the penthouse.
Yeah. Yeah,
which I'm good with.
I'm like a solid 6, and my wife is like a solid 9.5. So I'm good with that.
Yeah. I'm good with it too, right?
Yeah. Hopefully she doesn't like wise up and leave me, but I'm good. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about science. You want to talk to me about coronavirus? So the bottom line is it's called novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, novel coronavirus. There was a similar coronavirus. It's a beta coronavirus. There's a similar coronavirus, SARS-1, original SARS, SARS Classic, whatever you want to call it. And that, for the most part, got contained. I don't think that's been circulating in the population for, I want to say like a decade, maybe. So this is a novel coronavirus, it's a novel virus. It is spreading so widely because it has a lot of features that are very good for a virus. And it's also not very well known. It's novel. It's not known. We don't have a lot of knowledge about this. So a ton of people have come to me and said, like, what do I do? How is this going to happen? Like, what's going on here? And the bottom line is that there is a ton of research happening. I'm part of, I guess you could say, the global community that's researching this. A lot of amazing things are happening. A lot of amazing things are coming up. Science is moving at a pace that I don't think I've ever seen it move before. But most things are unknown. In order for me to believe something, I need like a randomized control study to believe it. I need a lot of scientific literature to prove it for me to believe it. So a good example of that is like the hydroxychloroquine? Yeah, hydroxychloroquine. So like everyone, when that started out, everyone was like, yeah, this shows some promise in treating it. And everyone kind of jumped on that. And the randomized control studies since then have showed that it probably doesn't really work that well. Most likely what was going on is that there are some cases where it might work. It might have some prophylactic or preventative uses. But as far as treatment for these people, most likely what was going on is that there was a confounding factor. There was something associated with hydroxychloroquine that was making it appear as though that drug worked. So a lot of things
Zinc,
are like that.
So my Google foo and anything I say is not fact, right? Like from what I've been reading, right, and heard, a lot of people have been saying the hydroxychloroquine at the whatever dosage that, you know what I mean, that been going on, because apparently it's been out, that medicine's been out for a while. And to be clear, excuse me, I'm not here to argue or discuss it, if it works or if it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like we're just like, my thing has been, there's so much craziness going on and there's so much conflicting articles and people coming out on, and it seems to have been, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but like it seems to be like how people vote at the voting booth seem to dictate what flavor science works today.
So that's
have you noticed that also?
So I'm not drinking right now.
Okay.
So I'm not going to go off on too much of a rant. But I mean, so like I'm going to kind of get back to that because politics have influenced that. Like a lot of people will say, like, oh, well, zinc is what made it work. And from the randomized control studies that I have looked at, it wasn't even that. It was the fact that it was like zinc and this, but it was being administered with anti-inflammatory steroids. And those have shown to be very promising.
Okay.
So it's like, if you look at the randomized controlled trials, randomized controlled studies, those are statistically speaking the best things you could possibly do because you control for things like that. Now, there are, I'm sure, doctors with anecdotal evidence saying, well, I gave this person this drug and it worked amazingly well. You know, that might be statistically insignificant. It might be statistically significant. It's, it's an anecdote. And the plural of anecdotes is not data, it is anecdotes. Data is a specific thing that has been measured with specific criteria and controls. And the majority of, these articles and things of that nature don't have controls. They're not they're not good. They're not scientifically accurate. So
The only thing that's getting really to me is like one side, and we can get back to this, like I said later, but like one side is like, this is the cure, and the other side is like, this is going to kill you. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you're saying, and me, I'm saying like, maybe, yeah, it could be possibility that it could help, but it's just.
Well, this is where, so I'm a scientist.
Yes.
I'm not a politician. I don't have a stake in this other than I'm getting irritated that politics is infecting my science. Right. Because people say, and like, this is not a dig at you, this is a dig at pretty much everybody right now, is that people are saying like, oh, the science is mixed up and contradicting itself, and people are saying one thing and people are saying another thing, and it's like, that's largely untrue. Politicians are saying one thing and contradicting themselves, and they are not scientists and don't know what they're talking about. News sources are saying one thing and then saying the opposite thing and contradicting themselves. By and large, the scientific community has been pretty straightforward on this. There is conflicting scientific results, but that's a part of the scientific process. Again, this is a novel virus. So we come out and say, or scientists come out and say, it looks like this, I wasn't aware of a rigorous scientific study that said hydroxychloroquine will absolutely help. It said it is possible that it could. Further studies need to be done. Right. Politicians and news sources did not say that. They said, oh, look, it's going to work now. This is working. Right. And scientists were like, well, that's not true. We need to investigate further. And then as we use the scientific method, which is basically you observe something, you make a hypothesis, you test it, you look at the results, and you make another hypothesis or conclusion. And as scientists were going like, okay, well, we're observing this. Let's test it as much as we possibly can. Right. And then we'll see what happens. Okay, well, maybe this isn't true. We now know this because we have more data, because again, this was novel. We don't have a lot of information, and we're building that data. Typically data on the level that people want is, will this drug work? How is this infecting? What mutations are relevant? Takes years and years for us to, as a community, to get, because we need those studies. We're trying to do this in a span of months. So a lot of people, and it's I don't understand this, because like we're going to get on masks in a second, but there's a lot of science out there that is very straightforward, and politicians and news sources are corrupting it, because they'll say, oh, well, okay, hydroxychloroquine shows in some cases that it may have helped. We need to investigate further. Right. And people will say, oh, it absolutely has helped. It said in this article, in this sentence, that it helped. And then, a follow-up article will say, with further research, we have found there were confounding factors that associate blah, 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 blah. And so hydroxychloroquine may not have helped as much. And then they'll say, oh, this article says it doesn't help. And it's like, that's not at all what it said.
See, article, like, I've kind of tried to back away from the news as much as I could and recently, right? So, but I remember, and this is going to be a horrible example, it's the only one I could really think of. It's like when the whole Clinton thing was happening with Monica Lewinsky. It's like, did you have sexual relations with that woman, right? That's how they used to pose the question, right? It was like, yes or no, what happened? Nowadays, questions are posed are like, so when you had sexual relations with that woman, what happened? It's like, well, wait a minute. I didn't, you know what I mean? He's like, well, no, that's not, I have the tough time on the floor and I'm asking the question, you know what I mean? Like they change that. And then some news source takes that and says, oh, look, he did this. And so, you know what I mean? Like I have noticed now that they change how they question it to almost like making a statement, and then it runs down, and then it gets spread out like wildfire. You know what I mean? Like, so I can only assume the same things happen with, you know what I mean? Hydroxychloroquine is working. Why? Versus, hey, it might work. What could be helping it work? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I mean, there's other things tangential to that we can hop into, but I'm kind of talking about this right now because I just saw something in the news. Like I just saw something in the news about it this morning, and I looked at it, and I had read a review about some studies 2 or 3 days ago, and I was like, wow, that thing in the news is not accurate at all. And I mean, I think a good way for me to kind of, here's a good kind of corollary. You know about guns, you know about gun safety, you know about efficiency of bullets and ballistics and things of that nature to some extent. When the news reports on a school shooting, how much of that information is accurate? Hardly any.
Zero. Yeah. And so that's the most upsetting part is that they go on. We're not going down that tangent.
But so, I mean, that's exactly what's happening here. Right. Now you are approaching subject matter expertise in firearms and ballistics and stuff like that.
Right.
That's a path that you're on. You know more than the average person, and you can identify that the news is full of shit there.
Right.
Most people do not have the scientific knowledge, the infectious disease knowledge that I have to know that what's being talked about by even the president half the time is complete bullshit. Like, I'm like,
Right.
that is factually incorrect.
Right.
We know it's incorrect. I have no clue why that's being said
Right.
on national news. It's
Well,
insane.
he's a special one. We can all admit.
Yeah.
He's a special
But
one.
I mean, you know, like them, like at every level, it's just
Yes.
like it's not. You know, here's a rigorous peer-reviewed article, and then here's like a story on that article, and then another news story posts a story on the story of the article, and it's like telephone, and eventually the message is lost, and it's twisted to political things. A big reason why. What's up?
Go ahead. Big reason.
So, a big reason why. So maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist. Anything is possible, but a big reason why I would believe that. Like the hydroxychloroquine drug, whatever, the next one that's going to happen as well. A big reason why they linger is because as soon as it was said, I'm very sure pharmaceutical lobbying groups got involved and said, hey, say this works so I can sell more of it. And you're going to get, I'm going to get you a prostitute. I'm going to take you out to dinner. I'm going to build you a new house. And all of a sudden, all these politicians are just like, well, now I've coveted favors from these people that are going to give me something. So let's keep pushing this instead of the science.
They was talking about how whoever makes hydroxychloroquine and whatever ramped up production to 1 million pills an hour.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And I mean, that company by and large doesn't care if it kills you. The politicians by and large don't care if it kills you. They just want their money. So that's why I don't listen to politicians or news sources. And this is a good resource for everybody out there. But if you go to PubMed, PubMed.com, they will have rigorous peer-reviewed scientific articles. If you go on the left, some of them are behind a paywall, which I am extremely against. But if you go on the left side and you click review and free full text, you will see reviews about a lot of different articles and different publications that are out there that are it's much easier to understand a review and it's more comprehensive. Yeah. And then free full text means that you'll have access to the full text of the article. It's not behind a paywall. If you're not getting sources from there, you're drinking tainted water because other people are adding their editorialism to that opinion. And I mean, this goes for people were talking about the ACE2 receptor. Like, why is this virus infecting like other organs besides your lungs and your respiratory organs? Like, well, it's a conspiracy. No, they have ACE2 receptors. It's pretty common. The molecular mechanism is known. It's not a conspiracy. Right. People were talking about the D614G mutation. Oh, that's gonna kill me.
If you don't nail this, you ruin this whole interview.
I want to say it's a D614G mutation in the spike protein that has computationally shown to be theoretically more pathogenic, but there's not enough evidence out there to actually prove that it is more pathogenic. I'm actually working on that myself, but like you'll see these articles and these stories that have this, and then it just gets like you can find really good data about that stuff on PubMed, or I think it's BioXRIV, something like that. But PubMed is really the place to go for unfiltered, good, scientifically peer-reviewed data. As soon as you leave that place, as soon as you leave peer-reviewed studies, you really start to muddy the water in what's real and what's not.
So what I wanted to say earlier was when I say people like us, like people in our community, people that think a little outside of the box, right? When we see not to get back on the example, but when there's like a school shooting or something and we hear how the news twists one way or the other, right? Mm-hmm. It like in my brain, I'm like, okay, I know a little bit about this one subject and I can already see what they're doing with it. Like you said, why can't they be doing that with politics or medicine or, you know what I mean? What's going on with the police or there's all this other stuff. And it's like, what I try and sometimes have a conversation with some friends that maybe don't lean the same way I do politically. And I say that to them and they kind of just like, oh, you're just saying fake news. And I'm like, but you got to understand, like if I have 3 subjects that I could kind of hold a conversation in, right? And all 3 of those subjects, some news article, but it doesn't matter who, I'm not saying one over the other, twist it and say like, oh, well, I know empirically that that's wrong. Those are the only 3 that they're doing it with. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I mean, that's actually something that I want to talk about later about like interacting with people in a more
Right.
productive environment. But, for me, and this is going to sound really assholish, but I've spent 20 years of my life, injecting mice with malaria and wearing, protective gear to study things that will make you really sick and making sure that I produce rigorously tested results so that when I publish, other people can take my results and go along with them,
Right.
or the things that I make can be used in society for good. When I do that and when I spend time doing that, I'm a subject matter expert. I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And other people, when I try and interact with them and they don't have as much experience, I just stop caring about what they say. Like if they say things like, well, some stupid ass thing that's completely irrelevant. And,
Right.
they like, well, if masks don't work because the actual size of the virus is smaller than the pore size of the mask. I'm like, oh, so you're a fucking moron. Okay. There's nothing for me to talk to you about here because we cannot have an educated conversation because you're just
Right.
not educated. And that's an assholish thing to say, but I have 20 years experience doing this. And
Right.
you're saying shit that is just, I knew wasn't true in high school. So it's difficult to talk to people like that overall. But I mean, you see this everywhere. I mean, would James Yeager go to an anti-gun rally and take firearms handling advice from those people?
No.
Of course not. He doesn't have the time. And at a
Right.
certain point in time, you kind of have to cut your losses and just be like, this person thinks that they are significantly more educated than they are, and I'm going to try and talk to them, but it's just eventually not going to work.
So
Like,
before we keep going, do you listen to a lot of Rogan?
sometimes, yeah.
Have you been listening to people he brought on over about the virus and stuff like that and what's going on?
He's started getting off on this weird thing about masks, and like he's asked somebody, oh god, so I saw him ask somebody like, yeah, if I'm in a sauna and I breathe in that hot air,
Yeah.
won't it kill the virus? And I was like, I can't fucking watch this right now. Like I was like, I can't fucking do this, man. This is out of my tolerance zone. I cannot handle this.
He's a little special. I need something to keep my mind going at work, right? And it seems he's
Mhm.
just had interesting people on recently, right? And
Mhm.
I've really tried to listen to books while at work, and there's a couple books on their list that I've started to read, and I've
Oh,
got
we're gonna talk about all of
yeah
them. Don't
yeah
worry.
yeah yeah. So, but like he brings people on and he talks like, and again, my brain logically sometimes goes down the path of like, he's like, how come nobody's talking about people's just everyday health? Like we had this kind of
Oh yeah.
conversation briefly a while ago, and you were like, look, dude, you're fat. You have a higher chance of this hitting you harder. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
but you know what I mean? Be healthy, eat healthy, take your vitamins if you've got vitamin problems. You know what I mean? Just do these basic things. And it really, like, again, I'm not listening a lot on the news, but it seems to be he's like the only dude as mass media that's saying like, there's a lot of things going on. We're not sure if the hydroxychloroquine works or the zinc works, blah, blah, blah. But like, you should be exercising. You should be taking vitamins. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. Like, why do you think that's not a
Well,
narrative?
because there's two. So first off, all of the stuff that, like, as far as him saying, take your vitamins, be healthy, live a healthy lifestyle, that is absolutely true. There are some, and it will actually, it looks like it's being shown to be true for this virus as well. Now, the problem is people will take edge cases. They will say, well, this healthy person
Yes.
got the virus
Yes.
and was bad. So me being healthy doesn't matter.
Correct.
And those people don't understand statistics at a high school level.
Yeah.
You need to look at like randomized control studies, populational studies. It has the number of people that have certain characteristics over a specific threshold, p-values, etc. I'm not going to get into that. Statistics is a nightmare even for me.
Right.
But edge cases don't mean shit. Yes, some people that are healthy will die. There's no way around that. That's just the way things are.
Right.
But if you are healthier, this particular virus will be less of a problem for you, it looks like. Now, there are cases where that's not true. There are other viruses that take advantage of people who have healthy immune systems, and it just makes that healthy immune response just go out of control.
Mhm.
So people with healthy immune responses, I think that was what the Spanish flu, I want to say it affected more people that were 18 to 25 because they had healthier immune responses. Hashtag a doctor, but not the one that you should probably listen to about everything. But
We'll just scrap the last 25 minutes.
yeah. So I mean, it's like
Yeah, but
I
yes,
haven't made definitive statements here because
correct.
we don't really know. But I mean, for this particular virus, being healthy is a good safeguard against it. There's other things you need to do, but just in general, I mean, how many people die of heart disease, cancers that are preventable because of eating habits, diabetes, things of that nature? Those are all relatively easily preventable, but it's
Yeah.
hard work. And the other thing is you can't sell something. So like going back to specific drugs, if we say this specific drug will fix this virus, I can sell you this drug and make me some money.
Right.
Everybody who, if you think pharmaceutical companies don't pay news organizations to advertise their drugs, you're out of your goddamn mind. But you can't say eat a healthy lifestyle, live a good life, and get 8 hours of sleep,
Right.
and your overall mortality is going to be better. People don't want to hear that because it's hard, and that's part of one of the stuff that I want to talk.
I wonder
about.
how many people like. So Jess just recently went to the doctors and got all types of blood work done. I mean, and she's young and healthy, and they found a couple of irregularities that they're gonna address. You know what I'm saying? But like, there's so many things that, like, most people probably. I mean, I would hope most people know you get a free checkup every 3. If you have insurance, you get one free checkup. Like just simple stuff of like, and I should not be the leading expert in in health, but in recent times, in the last month or two, Jess is, you know what I mean, and I've got a personal trainer. I've been going to the gym. She's getting a diet put together for me. Like vitamin D, a lot of everybody's been saying like vitamin D is kind of a big thing because a lot of us aren't out in the sun as much as we should be. Even Jaeger, who's like permanently sunburnt, right? Like he went to the doctor recently and he's like, I'm low on vitamin D, which I don't fucking understand. Outside 6 hours a day, every day, right? So these are simple things, along with, I'm going to guess you're about to say wear a mask.
Yeah, I mean, that we'll get into that later. But, I mean, those are simple things. I mean, it's very, like Jaeger always, I think it was Jaeger, but he was saying, it's like, you're fat and overweight and have a cigarette in your mouth, and you're worried about personal protection. It's like, it's too little too late.
Yeah.
Like, you're killing yourself. Why are you going to be worried about protecting yourself with a gun? And that's kind of the way I feel about a lot of these viruses. I mean, just in general, 8 hours of sleep and a remotely decent meal plan is going to just change your life for the better, mentally, physically, and expand your life. It's just going to be a lot better for you overall. So, I mean, wearing a mask is. I'll belabor this in a second. Wearing a mask is awesome. We should all be doing it. If you're not wearing a mask, you're a fucking moron. But you need to be eating healthy in the first place because that is the best thing that you could possibly do for your life. And I mean, this virus will go away soon enough. Another one will come along. I doubt it will take 100 more years because of the globalization and the increased population densities that we're seeing. We're going to have another pandemic soon. That virus or that bacteria or that prion, whatever, maybe that particular one will target a healthy population more. But until then, you want to be healthy.
Can we get a little bit conspiracy?
Okay.
Because we can have some fun.
I'm down.
So, Rogan had one dude on that's been researching the virus, and I say dude, some kind of doctor or something, right? And he said, by the looks of it, it seems like the narrative of it jumped from a bat to somebody that cooked it medium rare and ate it seems to be kind of unlikely.
So,
and it seems like there's maybe some kind of genetic altering because his reasoning, and I'll find the episode later and send it to you, but it was like the way a virus, I think, has to evolve so it can spread crazily through humans seems to have been rushed from their research.
So there's two things there. So this is, again, another problem that I have with everybody in that you've heard me talk and I've said, this is what things look like. To my knowledge, this is what I think. And, the majority of questions that you're going to have, I'm not going to have the answer for you because the answer doesn't exist.
Right.
Now, somebody else could come along, and this is my problem with these fucking nut jobs on the left and the right, where I say, this is what it looks like. Further studies need to be done to confirm.
Right.
Those people will say, it's definitely this. And then the population at large goes, well, that guy who's barely literate says he knows the answer, and you say you don't know the answer. He obviously knows more than you. We have to go with him.
Right.
And like, I'm not saying that's happening here, but this is one of those things where it's just going to be an unsatisfying answer for you.
Right.
In that, short of direct proof, like actual literal testimony from someone in a lab that says, I absolutely let this out, that's been backed up with other things, not just incoherent dribble in some article somewhere.
Right.
There's no real way of knowing. What I will say is that it is absolutely possible that I think what I read, and I'm doing some genetic analysis of the virus. I can't talk too much about it for legal reasons.
I got you.
But the publications that are already out there, it looks as though, a beta coronavirus in a bat may have gone into an intermediary species like a pangolin or something along those lines. There was a translocation that made binding to a spike protein significantly more efficient. It happened in a way, early reports showed that it happened in a way that computationally doesn't make sense. So if we were going to say, we're going to make this virus more efficient at attacking humans, we would do it in this specific way. We would not do it in this specific way. And the virus mutated in a way that's not obvious to us. And that's how it kind of jumped the species barrier. Basically just like, it was infectious in bats and infectious in this other thing. And then multiple viruses in the pangolin or whatever other intermediary species recombined. And then they made a virus that was extremely potent in humans. It's very possible. But the bottom line is, how would we know one way or the other?
Right.
We can't. And number two, who gives a shit? Like the entire world.
That means war with China, baby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, that's true. So, I mean, from my perspective, it's too little too late. Like, I don't care if China did release this. Like, my gripes with China are very deep. Their entire economy is based off of intellectual property theft.
Yeah.
And so them and their animal, the reason we cook meat at various temperatures and have
because of what China's doing now.
Well, yeah, I mean, we knew that these things are issues, so we say don't have wet markets and make sure you cook meat at these temperatures. China doesn't have that infrastructure. They don't have that kind of agricultural stringency, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of viruses come out of China. This is not the first one. This won't be the last. Unless they change kind of their culture about handling animals, we're going to get more viruses. That sucks. But it pales in comparison to their intellectual property theft. Like, I'm
China's
not a big fan
of
China.
A whole different episode. So let's keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, it could be a weapon. Who cares? I mean, We need to treat it now. We need to fix it. And this is was it taking us like half hour to get on this? Masks.
Whatever.
If you're not wearing a mask, you're a fucking idiot. And I'm not talking about coronavirus. I'm just talking about for flu viruses in general, respiratory issues in general. Masks are awesome. Masks are great. There are a lot of people out there that don't understand masks, so I'm going to kind of bottom line this the best that I can. There's the N95 mask. That has been rated to stop most things from infecting you. If I'm wearing an N95 mask, when I wore an N95 mask, and I got fit tested for it to make sure the mask that I wore fit me, I knew that when I was working with really horrible things that could potentially kill me, I was safe to an extent. I used a biosafety hood, various personal protective, things like that, but the mask helped as well. Now, it's known that masks are able to help filter out the virus from coming into you. Now, this is another thing where like it kind of got lost in translation. When you exhale from the N90, when you're wearing an N95 and you exhale, your breath isn't as filtered. It kind of just like pushes out the side of the mask between the mask and your face. So that means that although the mask will very, very, very efficiently prevent you from getting the virus, it's not as good as helping prevent you from transmitting the virus, meaning it like you could theoretically transmit it. But people started saying, well, masks or N95 masks are not effective at preventing transmission. Those people are fucking idiots because like, if you have an N95 mask on your face and you cough or you talk or you sneeze and you're infectious, the majority of those viral particles, respiratory droplets, etc., are actually going to get trapped on that mask. And the stuff that kind of filters out between the mask and your face, it's not going to, like, you could do it with yourself, just like cough or talk and put your hand out 2 feet in front of you. You'll feel the respiratory droplets, the air, whatever else, and you're expelling it out to people. If you have that N95 mask on, That's not happening. The droplets are kind of going right by your face. It's not spreading out. They do a phenomenal job of preventing you from spreading the virus as well, although not as efficient as preventing you from getting it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's an N95. They're awesome. The issue there is that, and I think that message largely got politically muddied because frontline workers needed N95 masks, and we didn't have a good enough supply because we rely on fucking China to make them for us, which is retarded. Don't get me started on that.
So we could just so we can hit on it, because we're at that point, right, in this conversation. This is why the news, I'm assuming you're the same kind of guy. I would just rather know the shitty news up front, right? And be told to be responsible, right? Know that I'm going to be maybe a little bit irresponsible, but not hugely, right? So they come out and they say, hey, you should wear a mask. Then Fauci comes out and says, well, I don't want to say Fauci. I didn't mean to say that. Then the news comes out and says, don't wear masks. Masks don't really do anything because they were trying to keep the mass scare down. And then they come back and said, oh, yeah, well, we said not to just so the supply stayed up so we could keep it for the frontline workers. You get what I'm saying? Whereas if they would have just came out and said, look, please don't mass rush out and buy all N95s. You know what I mean? Like, keep it, maybe just for a little bit, keep it quiet so they can stock up a little bit. Because luckily, Jess's hospital stayed well stocked, but Vanderbilt, which is a huge countrywide known hospital, did not have enough. And they hit like 80 or 90 employees got it, and they had to leave because they were reuse masks, and before they knew how to disinfect the masks correctly, and you know what I mean? Like, so sorry.
And that's where politics got into my science.
Correct.
Because from my knowledge, the initial CDC reports that I saw were consistent in that these masks work really well. They might not be as to prevent you from getting it. That's what frontline workers need because they're dealing with active patients.
Right.
They might not be as good as preventing it, but however, if you don't get fit tested for one of those, they don't really work they work better than nothing, but they don't work as well as they should be. And then handling them, etc. The average person is constantly like fidgeting and touching their face, and that's a way to get sick. Yeah. That information was what I saw from the CDC. And then I don't really listen. I don't really care too much. And then people were saying that the CDC was saying wearing a mask is worse for you. And that might be one of those things that was lost in translation again, where they were saying like, hey, you can wear this mask, but unless you're fit tested and, it's not going to work that well. If you're touching your face, you could go into high risk situations and make yourself more likely to get it.
Right.
And then news organizations took that and said the CDC said wearing a mask is worse for you. Right. I don't know if that's what's actually happened. That's what I would imagine. Frankly, I don't care because I know the science. Right. The science is N95s are just a gift from God because we are allowed to do so much work and stay so safe because of them. They're amazing. That being said, they're difficult to get, etc. The cloth mask thing. The cloth masks, they will probably help prevent you. They definitely do help you. They prevent you from getting the virus a little bit. But the main purpose of the cloth mask that I think everyone should be wearing, even if like the coronavirus disappeared today, next year during flu season, we should be wearing cloth masks because they prevent you from spreading it.
Stop. And that's, I think, a huge point you just made, right? Mm-hmm. During flu season, right? Like you're not, I'm assuming, not out here saying you should be wearing masks 24/7 anytime you want to go out because, right? Like you're not saying that. But during flu season or during, you know what I mean? Right? Like,
so it would help. Like, so we are at a dense enough population now, like people in New York. So like, let me rephrase it. If you're on a farm, if you're in a rural area and you're not really seeing anybody, you're not, the people that you work with, wearing a mask isn't doing that much for you.
Right.
It will help possibly prevent this virus that we have now and I'll get into the why, but it doesn't matter if you wear a mask. If you're walking around New York City, you should probably be wearing a mask all year round because it's just so convenient and it helps prevent the spread of diseases. But it's, it's a lot of people think it's an issue. It's demonized, et cetera, et cetera. Scientifically, if people in dense populations wore masks all the time, our infectious disease rates would drop. There's no question about that. Is it logistically possible? Is it recommended, et cetera? That's a separate issue. I certainly am not going to wear a mask all the time because it's just not great. But right now, during this particular pandemic, I think that everybody should be wearing a mask, and this is the reason why. the mask catches the respiratory droplets that this virus is transmitted on. It prevents you from expelling the virus to out in the air, and it will help prevent you from spreading the virus overall, and it should give you a sense of security. It is the duty of the strong to protect the weak. I'm strong, I wear a mask. So that's it. Now, the reason why you should wear a mask now is because we have a global pandemic, and this virus is transmitted by people that don't show any symptoms, asymptomatic people, and it is also transmitted by people before they show symptoms. So if you're sick and you can transmit the virus, let me rephrase that, because sick is might have a different connotation. If you are infected with the virus and you can transmit the virus, you might not have symptoms for a couple of days until you become classically sick and you have symptoms. And once you put on the mask, then it's too late, because those 2 to 4 days that you didn't have the mask on, that you were infected and infectious, right, you could have spread it to a lot of people. And that's why if you're not wearing a mask, you're a fucking idiot, because right now you could walk by somebody that gets you sick and they didn't know they were sick. And it's, you get sick and then you spread it to other people. It is the duty of the strong to protect the weak. You need to protect other people around you. And by just wearing a cloth mask, you can drop the odds that you're going to transmit this virus tremendously. And like I said, there's going to be a period of time where you're just not going to know if you're sick. Now, if you're in like Camden and you're in like John's compound and it's the same people there every day, they don't interact with anybody outside, they get their food shipped in or whatever else, wearing a mask is not significantly helpful there. You have to use your brain to some extent. Right. But if you're coming into contact with people you don't know, if you're going out in the public, you are putting yourself at risk for getting this virus. It is a good idea for you to put the mask on to prevent yourself from getting it a little bit, but more importantly, to prevent yourself from transmitting it. If I were to get sick because I didn't wear a mask in a high-risk area or whatever else, and I didn't wear a mask and transmitted it to somebody else, I would feel horrible. But masks have gotten political. The science on masks is been well known for a long time. We know how well they work. We know the mechanisms by which they work. They're fucking awesome. And it's a little piece of cloth. I was saying for years, man, I wish people would wear masks in public more often. Our flu rates would drop significantly. That's because I do flu testing and things of that nature. Like I know the statistics behind it. Right. They would be so great, but they're demonized in America. I've worked in science companies, and people get sick.
Politicized.
Yeah. It's for whatever reason, it's been politicized.
Yeah.
But I'll work at science companies and I'm just like, somebody gets sick and we're just like, hey, wear this mask. And I'm like, oh, sorry, forgot. Put it on. And then that person's not demonized. That person's like, oh man, I'm so happy so-and-so is wearing a mask because I'm slightly more protected right now. And it's
okay. So to review for the dumb, N95 in, everything else out. Ballpark.
I don't want to say that because N95s will help out as well.
Okay, so N95
in and slightly less out,
and then cloth out,
and slightly less in. Yeah, they're amazing though, and a lot of people are pushing these garbage science things about like, if you wear a mask, it increases your CO2 levels and make you more likely to get sick. That's bullshit, and that's provably bullshit, and that's been known to be false forever.
Jess would have been passed out because they run her through every once in a while. She got a raise, which she did, financial raise, and got into the float pool, which is like the hardest position to get into the hospital because you have to work everywhere. And then the coronavirus apocalypse happened, and they're like, cool, we're going to shut down the some part of the hospital, the swing, and make it a corona unit, right? All the rooms, negative pressure, all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, cool. Hey, check it out, float nurses. This is your new home. And I was like, should I just not go to work then? Like, we're all going to get it. Let's just chill. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, oh, hell no. She's like, we got to do this mask and this shield and this hairnet and this glove and this thing and this, that, you know what I mean? Like and then as soon as you can't reuse any of the stuff. Mm-hmm. Now some of the stuff gets cleaned or whatever they've figured out. But my point to saying all this was that woman lives in a mask. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and 12 hours a day, unless she's taking lunch or something like that. And she hasn't passed out from.
Yeah. And like I was saying, like rigorously reviewed studies. I don't know of a single study that has looked at people that wear like cloth surgical masks and has said, yeah, this group of people, when controlled for, is shown to have like higher CO2 levels and weakened immune systems than the rest of the population, because I don't think they exist. But I mean, you can pass an article on Facebook and people think they're experts, and that's where they get their information from. But yeah, masks are freaking awesome, man. And I think what we are going through right now is horrible. But I genuinely think that there are a lot of benefits that are going to come from this. I think, so I have to be kind of careful with what I say here. But I don't think we've had an opportunity to look at respiratory viruses or respiratory illnesses in a manner as we have recently. I think the data that we're going to get from researching SARS-CoV-2 is going to be able to be translated into making better flu vaccines, treating people better for respiratory illnesses, and we're going to use the data here that we have now as a model for a lot of other things. And I think that is going to be an overall plus. I'm pretty sure that for legal reasons, I can't say certain things, so I need to filter this, but I'm very, very confident that the data that we're getting now is going to change the dynamic of infectious disease, and the ability for us to analyze data the way we are now with this machine learning and artificial intelligence is going to bring us into a new age of medicine. As far as personalized medicine for an individual person, looking at how their specific immune system is responding to specific pathogens, and insofar as just how to treat a population globally, the information that we're getting now is going to be unbelievable. And, I can't say too much, but the world's going to change for the better because of this.
If there ever was a line that gives us hope.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that I'm doing is not going to be publishable for months.
Right.
But I know it's going to change the face of the world because of it's never been done before. Yeah. And the technology that we have available to us, there's a phenomenal book called Deep Medicine about artificial intelligence role in medicine as a whole. And I think that if you're interested in how computational biology, machine learning, artificial intelligence is going to help us, that's a good book to kind of start with. But the stuff that we are doing, the data that we may have available to us, air quotes, is going to be able to be used to answer questions that people have been asking for decades. And that's basically because all resources now are being devoted to, or
right,
not all resources, significantly more resources than normal are being devoted to study respiratory illnesses. And that's just never happened before.
Right.
To the level that it is.
I think we've covered what there is to cover.
Yeah.
About this. I mean, you said 10 minutes. We're 50 minutes in, and I appreciate. No.
We got tangential about a lot of stuff because I was expecting you to say are masks okay. We talked about a lot of political issues and other things.
But here's the problem. Here's not the problem. Here's why I enjoyed this is because I would venture to bet most people. I don't feel like I'm special. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I think higher than most people. So I feel like a lot of the questions that I have, you get what I'm saying? Like, yeah, people have like Dana. Dana lives. I mean, if I had a strong enough arm, I could probably throw a football to where Dana's house is. You know what I mean? A baseball to where Dana's house is. And when this first popped off, you know what I mean? Dana has a few pre-existing conditions. You know, so yeah. I mean, he's only been dead twice, so he's like shut down. Like, I'm not leaving the house. I'm not doing this. And we're super blessed. We live in a great community. There's a Publix down the road. So it's like, if he had to leave, he would do whatever he could do. You know what I mean? He shaved his face. He did everything so he could fit the mask right. And we were running back and forth, like, buy whatever you can. I'll buy whatever I can. You know what I'm saying? And then now it just seems like there's more and more acceptance of like, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Like we went out yesterday or Saturday and I don't know how, but he like forgot to bring a mask with him. So we had to, like, we were a mile down the road or whatever. So we doubled back and came back. And it's just like 6 months ago or 3 months ago, whenever this popped off, you know what I mean? And I'm just using him as an example. Like, we were both like leaving the house wearing gloves and masks to go grocery shopping. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
people get comfortable. I feel like I can't speak to if it's worse than what people thought it was going to be or better than what people thought it was going to be. There's a big conversation if, you know what I mean? Like the shutdown, what the shutdown did, if it helped, if it didn't help, you know what I mean? Like, I think one positive thing is people learned how to wash their fucking hands correctly.
The amount of, so
You get right? Like people know
yeah,
people like, and it's, you know what? Like sometimes it takes bad things to happen, right? Like,
yeah. So you weren't at my, I don't know who would have been there that you would know, the tactical instructor course with Jaeger.
no.
When I did it, I don't know. I know there's like Jordan,
It
Ken,
was a couple years ago.
Marcus. Yeah, I did it a while ago. But I started off because I saw somebody chewing on a pen.
Yeah.
And I started off with you can ask them if they remember a big diatribe about washing your hands.
Yeah.
So I've been on this train for a while, but it's just I'm now getting some publicity to some extent with my friends because a lot of people are saying, Mike, what do I do? And let me answer that. I am, I am me, and I do what I do, and I am a subject matter expert. I will proudly say that I'm a subject matter expert in this one small area. I am not the subject matter expert. There are many people that know more than me. That I spend my time doing science and fighting. There are people that spend their time doing nothing but science and know more than me. But what I will say is that John Farnham, I think, was don't go to stupid places with stupid people and do stupid things.
Yeah.
Same thing here. When this started, everyone was justified in being a little freaked out because we didn't know what was going on. Now that we have more statistics, there have been a lot of social experiments that have been going on with rallies and riots and things of that nature that we've seen happening. People using personal protective equipment and not, et cetera, et cetera. We understand what's going on a lot more now. Treatments have evolved. Before it was just throw somebody on a ventilator and then they realize, oh, this is not looking good. We need to try other things. A lot of things have evolved since this first started. So we as a country have decided that it ain't no thing. We're just going to deal with it, which is unfortunate because we can control this a lot better than we are. And that probably goes for the world as well. I don't know. But wear a mask, be careful, wash your hands. If you are in, like the other day, I had to go out and look for something. And I went out because, I'm going to live my life to a good extent. I'm going to go out and I'm like, I needed a couple things. So I went out and got a couple things. I ended up, I needed a specific thing and it was located in a Target in Durham. For those of you that are aware, Durham is kind of densely populated. It's not super fancy, urbanized, whatever you want to call it. We went into this Target and I walk in with Edie, my wife, and then we look around and I'm like, I'm not staying here. And I just turned around, I walked around, I stayed away from people, I didn't touch anything, and then as soon as we possibly could, we circled around and went out. And even she was just like, it's not worth staying here. There's a huge line for what I need. I just want to get out. And I was like, good, we're leaving. Another Target that I went to, I was like one of 7 people in it, and that's okay. You need to measure what you do, and this goes the same thing when you're carrying a gun. I'm not going to go into really shitty areas that have high crime just because I have a gun. I'm not going to go into a really densely populated area where people are known to be sick and there's a lot of cases floating around just because I feel like going there and I have a mask and I feel invincible.
Right.
The same principles that you would use for mask usage and going out in public, would be very, the same principles that you'd use for that, I would say you would also already be using for firearm carrying, just tweak it a little bit. That's my opinion. And while we're at it, I said, if you're not wearing a mask, you're probably a fucking idiot. Now, I stand by that. There are certain cases that you can't, like scuba divers. If you're like an oyster, whatever, you can't wear a mask. It's understandable. Somebody said that to me. Another guy was like, I know, he was like, well, I can't wear a mask because I'm a welder. And we're not allowed to, you can't really make a non-flammable mask on your face. He's like, these things will catch sparks and light my face on fire. I can't wear it. So I just put one on when I'm not welding. What do you think, Mike? And I'm just like, dude, you're doing the best you can. Like, that's you have a specific case in which you, I don't want your face to catch fire, but I mean, are you really welding with that many people? And he's just like, well, I mean, there's some people around us, but it's also pretty hot. We have the UV light from the arcs and this and that. I'm just like, dude, do what you can. When you're done, you back up and you go out to lunch, put a mask on. Like, you live your life. There are people that cannot wear masks. If you are not wearing a mask because the government told you to wear a mask, you are being manipulated by the government. I want to make that very clear, because I keep seeing people say, like, I'm not wearing a mask because the government told me to. I'm a free man. I was like, no, you are 100% being manipulated by the government. If you are wearing a mask because the government told you to wear a mask, or if you are not wearing a mask because the government told you to wear a mask, you are being manipulated by the government. You are not a free man. When I break laws because that's what I need to do to be a free man. I don't do it because, I can break a law, I should break a law. No, you're being manipulated at that point. So this whole, like, wearing masks is a sign of patriotism or not wearing masks is a sign of patriotism, enough. I don't care about it. Just be smart.
Here's what we're going to do right now.
Okay.
Because this is an episode in itself.
Alrighty.
I'm going to pause. Okay. We'll run downstairs and we get something to drink. Right. So I'm going to end all this, give you a chance. Did you come prepared? You're a doctor.
Yeah. I'm good.
So let's do that. And then we'll restart everything and we'll pick up with the outline that didn't even have coronavirus on it.
That's the least important thing, man.
All right. I'm going to end all of this. Okay.
Okay. Should I just, like, recall you?
Yes. I'll send another thing.
All right, cool.
How do I